it's time to sit back and relax with your favorite drink. And listen. Good evening, my nightbound travelers, and welcome back to the Veil's thin edge, where the world you trust begins to flicker and the darker machinery beneath it grinds on unseen. I'll be your guide once more, steady voice, dim lantern, leading you through the quiet corridors where horror isn't just born from monsters, but from the systems we've taught to obey. So lock the doors, hush the noise, and take a breath you're not entirely sure you can hold. Tonight we're stepping into a tale where reality repeats itself in all the wrong ways, where the cost of obedience is paid by those who can't escape. Somewhere far from any map, a soldier believes he's training inside a harmless simulation, until the patterns don't break, until a child knows his name before he speaks it, until the same day plays out again with a precision no program should possess. What he discovers behind the classified walls isn't a glitch, but a place where every choice he makes echoes into the next impossible day. If you're ready to venture into a story where time is a weapon, where innocence is expendable, and where one man must choose between duty and damnation, then follow me. Our descent begins now. The Echoes of Temporal Warfare by Augustus Cordoba. Part 1. I tapped a restless rhythm on the cold metal desk, staring at the same slab of Afghan wasteland sliding across my screens for what had to be the 100th damn time this week. The Predator's feed was all dust, rocks, and thorny nothing, but I kept my eyes glued to it anyway. Well, that was a job. 18 months of pixel watching, waiting for a ghost to twitch somewhere on the far side of the planet. The trailer's AC coughed like it was choking to death. Honestly, it probably was. Everything at base felt patched together with duct tape at best. Glanced at my watch, 0327 local, afternoon in Afghanistan, or close enough. The time warp still messed with my head. My body never knew which side of the world it belonged to. Lewis. Colonel Arthur's voice sliced through the electronic hum behind me. I didn't spin around right away. You learn quickly. Finish your thought before you look an officer in the eye, even if they're trying to play friendly. Sir? I pivoted my chair finally. Colonel Arthur stood there like he'd been sculpted from a recruitment ad. Uniform razor sharp, posture so perfect it looked hostile. The kind of man who'd starch his socks for fun. How's the hunting today? Oh, quiet, sir. Target zone's been dead for 6 hours. I motioned at the monitors. Only movement out there is goats. Well, he nodded, but it was the kind of nod that barely touched the surface. His eyes weren't on the feed. No, they were on whatever conversation he'd been rehearsing before he'd walked in. Here, walk with me. I saved my coordinates and followed him out. The Nevada heat hit like opening an oven built specifically for suffering, and the sun wasn't even properly awake yet. We cut across the gravel toward the main building, past rows of cookie-colored trailers full of operators squinting at their own little squares of empty desert. 18 months on the program, Arthur said, more statement than question. Yes, sir. A good record, clean strikes, minimal collateral. Psych evaluations look solid. I stayed quiet. When a colonel starts reciting your resume, it's never just for entertainment. No, something heavier is coming. Hey, how do you feel about the work, Lewis? That one landed with weight. Well, the real answer, some days I felt like I was doing something that mattered. Other days it felt like I was playing an overpriced, real-world shooter where the NPCs bled for real. But you don't drop that on a man with an eagle on his chest. Well, it's important work, sir. I'm honored to do it. Colonel Arthur stopped walking then and turned to me. Just like that, the air got still in a way that had very little to do with the desert. What if I told you there's a way to serve in a, different capacity? Something that actually puts you closer to the pulse of the mission. Well, that certainly snapped me awake. Well, I'd say I'm listening, sir. There's a classified program that needs someone with your particular toolkit. New tech, ground-side operations. Well, you'd be remote still, but the work wouldn't look anything like the pixel watching you're stuck with now. Different. God, that word hit like cold water. Different meant I finally might climb out of the loop. No more staring at dead sand, no more wondering whether the silhouettes I erased had kids waiting for them at home. What kind of tech are we talking about? That's above what we can discuss out here. But if you want in, I can get you a briefing this afternoon. For a second, I pictured myself back in the trailer, back in that frozen desert feed where nothing ever happened until something terrible did. Oh, I'm interested, sir. Arthur gave me a smile. Real, unguarded, the first hint of humanity I'd ever seen in him. Good. Belton C, 1400. As for David Edwards. 3 hours later, I was in a conference room that looked like someone had ripped it out of a Silicon Valley startup and dropped it in the middle of the base. White walls, metal table polished like a mirror, and that sharp chemical smell of a brand new piece of tech. David Edwards walked in, a red-haired guy pushing 40, wearing a smile engineered for instant trust. Dirk, yeah? Great to finally meet you. I shook his hand like we were old buddies who'd just run into each other at a bar. Colonel Arthur speaks very highly of your work. Well, thank you, sir. Just David, he said, waving it off. No ranks in here. We keep things loose. He pointed me toward a seat. Coffee? Water? I'm good, thanks. He flicked through something on a tablet, screens flashing across his face. So, grown-ups. Must be a hell of a ride. It has its moments. I imagine all that responsibility, all that distance. He leaned in a little then. Sometimes I wonder if being thousands of miles away makes the job easier, or a whole lot harder. Well, I didn't have an answer for that, so I kept my mouth shut. David read my silence like it was some kind of a confession. Well, what we're building here might give you an entirely different angle on the world, literally. He spun the tablet toward me. On the screen was a machine, human-shaped but unmistakably metal and muscleless. Joints like armored vertebrae, limbs built for precision, and a cluster of sensors where a face should have been. This is the Mark 7 Tactical Response Unit. It can run itself if we need it to, but the real purpose is human control. The operator gets everything the unit gets: vision, audio, even touch. I leaned in, drawn to it despite myself. God, the thing looked so sleek, so polished, like someone raided a sci-fi prop department and decided to make their toys lethal. Well, how do you drive something like that? I asked. That, David said, swiping to another screen. That's the fun part. He showed me a device that looked like a VR headset mutated into something far more serious. Cables, ports, layered lenses. Full sensory immersion. When you're linked, you don't just watch what the unit sees. You feel its weight, its steps, its environment. You're not piloting the robot. You are the robot. Functionally, anyway. Well, the implication snapped into place fast. No more blurry drones, no more guessing games about whether a shape in the dust was holding a rifle or a shovel. What's the range? Global. Quantum encrypted satellite stream. You could sit in this room and operate on the far side of the planet just like you do now, only with full sensory presence. The door opened and a woman walked in, arms full of folders. Asian, early 30s, sharp eyes that missed nothing. She moved like someone whose brain ran hotter than everyone else's. Dirk, meet Kate Wang, lead technician. Kate, this is Dirk Lewis. She nodded once, crisp and exact. You're Arthur's drone operator. Yeah, that's me. Good, you'll need strong reflexes. The neural interface can hit hard the first time. She flipped open a folder, revealing what looked like medical stat sheets and diagrams of neural pathways. The system builds a sensory bridge between your nervous system and the unit's input stream. Some people sync right away. Others take a few rounds to stop fighting it. Well, the trick is simple. Don't resist. Let the machine's senses settle into your mind. David kicked back in his chair, his eyes bright. The applications are insane when you really think about it. Clearing buildings without losing people. Recon with absolute clarity. Eyes on the ground that can't bleed. Well, what's the mission profile? I asked. A new voice answered before David could. That depends on how fast you get comfortable with the system. I turned. A man in his 40s stood in the doorway. Thin hair, thick glasses, the posture of someone who'd spent most of his life wrestling spreadsheets instead of sandstorms. Jim Sutherland, Mission Analysis. He shook my hand with a surprisingly steady grip. I'll be handling your, operational parameters. Operational parameters. That phrase felt cold, clinical, like being measured for a suit you weren't sure you wanted to wear. Jim slid into a seat and cracked open his folder. We're looking at a target zone in southern Afghanistan, on the outskirts of Kandahar. Intel suggests insurgent movement, but the terrain's a nightmare. Too many blind angles for traditional aerial coverage. He pushed a satellite photo across the table. A tiny village tucked into harsh, broken hills. Exactly the kind of place where trouble breeds quietly. Ground-level recon from the Mark 7 will give us clarity, Sutherland continued, and if necessary, it can perform direct action. Well, the photo looked almost peaceful. Scattered homes, patches of farmland, a road curling toward the main highway, another quiet place hiding something sharp underneath. What kind of insurgent activity? I asked. Well, mostly suspected weapons caches, Sutherland said. Maybe bomb materials. Satellite can't confirm, which is why we need someone on the ground, even if it's ground in the robotic sense. David drummed his fingers lightly. The beauty of this system. You'll get the full presence of being there without any of the personal risk. Worst case scenario, you pull the plug, and the unit drops offline. What happens to it if I disconnect? I asked. Kate answered without looking up. It retains basic autonomy, return to base protocols, self-destruct if compromised. But anything advanced requires a human mind steering it. Well, it all sounded clean. Really a bit too clean, like a pitch-polished one step past believable. But after 18 months of fighting a war through a screen with no depth, no heat, no heartbeat, the idea of being in the mission, even through metal skin, felt like oxygen to me. And even if present meant thousands of miles away, jacked into a machine built for danger. When will this all go down? I asked. Well, as soon as you're cleared, David said. We just need to push you through a psych screening. Make sure your mind won't tear itself in half when the sensory link kicks in. Right on cue, another woman stepped into the room. Older than Kate, mid-40s maybe, her posture sharp enough to slice paper. She looked like someone who traded a uniform for a lab coat but kept the command presence. Dr. Clementine Gordon, she said, shaking my hand with a firm, practiced grip. I'll be conducting your psychological evaluation. Anything specific you're looking for? I asked. Just confirming you can handle the neural overlap. Some operators get disoriented. A few struggle to separate their own body from the robots. She said it lightly, as if blurring your sense of self was no big deal. Just standard precautions. She then pulled up a tablet and began flicking through screens. Now, any unusual stress from your current assignment? Nightmares? Dissociation? Trouble sleeping? Hell yes, but I'd learned how to keep the seams from showing. Nothing outside the usual range, I said. Good, she nodded, making notes. Any concerns about stepping into a more immersive environment? One, I admitted. Will I actually be able to tell what's me and what's the machine? Absolutely. The system enforces that line. You'll feel everything the unit experiences, but your awareness stays anchored. You stay you. And she scribbled a few more lines. Now, in my professional opinion, you're a strong candidate. Any other questions? I looked around the room then. 4 faces, 4 different kinds of certainty. David with his easy optimism, Kate with her razor-sharp intensity, Jim with the cold logic of a man who lived in data, Dr. Gordon with a clinical calm. Well, they believed in this thing, whatever it really was. Why, when do we start? I asked. David's smile stretched wider then, almost triumphant. Tomorrow morning. I thought about my trailer, the humming monitors, the empty desert I'd been staring at for a year and a half. Ooh, sounds good to me. Walking back across the base, the dawn heat settled on me like a weight I didn't mind carrying. For the first time in months, there was something in my chest besides fatigue and static. Anticipation. Part 2. Well, the tech felt unreal. Well, the mission, simple. Boots on ground recon, intel gathering, maybe a strike if things got hot, all with a steel body between me and the bullet. Well, for the first time since stepping into drone warfare, I got myself feeling something dangerous. I was actually looking forward to the next shift. The headset was a beast, way heavier than anything Kate's briefings had prepared me for. Well, she'd describe it like slipping on sunglasses. In reality, it felt like someone had forged a motorcycle helmet out of scrap metal and then clamped it onto my skull. The neural port pads pressed against my temples with surgical precision, uncomfortably exact, like fingers tapping on bone. Now, just relax, Kate said, tweaking something on the side of the rig. The initial link can feel a little unusual. Goddamn unusual did not come close. The moment she threw the switch, my body vanished. Not figuratively, no. It was gone. One instant I was sitting in a folding chair in Nevada. The next the world buckled, the whole world, and I was standing on sun-baked sand and jagged rocks somewhere a hell of a lot less American. Felt like reality decided to drop me through a trapdoor. My stomach flipped, except I wasn't sure I had a stomach anymore. I looked down. Metal hands, jointed fingers. No skin, just synthetic plating and sensor pads where nerves should have been. Yet I felt everything. The weight of the arms, the faint hum of servos balancing me, the grit of dust settling on my metallic palms. Holy shit, I breathed, and the words echoed out of external speakers instead of my throat. How are you feeling? Kate's voice whispered through the unit's internal comms, tiny, crisp, like someone was speaking from inside my skull. Like I'm actually here, I said. I flexed the robot's fingers. They obeyed instantly, perfectly. God, this is unreal. A village sprawled ahead, just like Jim's satellite photos. Mud brick homes stacked together, alleys twisting between them like veins feeding a living organism. But the sensory feed made it something else entirely. I could smell smoke from cooking fires, hear goats bleating and kids yelling somewhere deeper in the maze, feel the noon heat bleeding off the walls. Now, remember your mission parameters. Jim's voice sliced in, cold and clinical. Recon only. Direct action if and only if the situation demands it. Right. I wasn't here to marvel at the tech, no, I was here to work. I stepped forward. The robot's legs moved like they'd always belonged to me. Each motion was precise and controlled. Except my real legs were gone, severed from my awareness. All I felt were these metal limbs, these hydraulic joints, moving over uneven dirt as if the machine and I had been fused together from the start. Now, most of the villagers were holed up inside, hiding from the heat. Smart move. The sun out here felt like a punishment. I drifted past deserted market stalls, a few goats tied in a dusty courtyard, a well with a metal bucket resting beside it. Everything looked quiet. Very quiet. Peaceful in a way that didn't match the intel stamped across my mission brief. Hardly the vibe of a supposed insurgent hideout. I was checking the corner of a mud brick wall when I heard it. A woman's voice, low and strained, speaking in what sounded like Arabic or Farsi. The translation software spun up, but what came came through was a chopped, broken stream of meaning. Protection, danger, fear. I followed the sound and found her kneeling beside a small house facing east, probably praying. Mid-50s, wrapped in a dark headscarf and heavy robes, the kind of clothing that absorbed the sun like it was trying to melt her alive. Her voice cracked with something raw enough to make me hesitate, even though every line of my mission parameter screamed, "Keep moving." Her words blurred into static, but her tone pierced right through the machine. She wasn't scared in the vague way people get when insurgents lurk nearby. No, this was much sharper. Fear with edges. Fear pointed towards something real, something close. I was about to step away when a kid burst around the corner. 8, maybe 9, thin as a twig, dressed in a dirt-stained white shirt and brown pants. He locked eyes with the robot and froze, shock hitting him like a slap. Then he started talking, fast, panicked, hands chopping the air, pointing behind me. The translation software couldn't keep up. It spat out gibberish, but his body language didn't need subtitles. He was warning me, hard. I turned, sweeping the area with the robot's upgraded sensors. Nothing obvious, just more sun-blasted buildings, a few piles of rubble and a narrow alley twisting back toward the road. "Yeah, kid's probably just spooked by the robot," David said over the comms. "Keep moving." Something stuck like a splinter. The way the boy had looked at me, at the units. This wasn't just fear. It was recognition. Like he'd seen this machine before, which made no sense at all. I stepped toward the kid, trying to make sense of his frantic signaling. And that's when my world cracked open. Gunfire ripped the quiet apart. 2 ambush points lit up, one on a rooftop to my left, another from a window dead ahead. Muzzle flashes stuttered like lightning, rounds slamming into the robot's plating before I even had time to react. Sparks kicked off my chassis, metal ringing like a church bell under a hammer. The unit's combat protocol snapped into place faster than anything human. I threw the body behind a low mud wall, and touched the ground hard. It felt like bone and muscle hitting dirt. I tasted dust, gritty, scorched by the sun, and kicked up by bullets like a storm made of sand and lead. "Contact! Contact!" I shouted, though I wasn't sure who the hell I expected to answer. There were 2 shooters, maybe more. Target overlays flickered across my vision, tactical data tagged in neon red. The rooftop gunman, 30 meters out, flat roof, firing an AK pattern rifle. Second shooter, first floor window, half hidden behind a splintered wooden shutter. I pushed the unit up just enough to return fire. The robot obeyed, the thought like instinct. Weapon raised, trigger squeezed, recoil slamming through my hands exactly like real steel. The first burst shredded the rooftop shooter, his body disappearing backward into the hot sky. The second shooter then shifted, trying to get a better line on me. I answered with 3 tight rounds straight through the shutter, the wood exploding into jagged splinters. And then the firing stopped. Silence crashed down, broken only by the ghostly ringing in my artificial ears. "Ah, nice work," Jim's voice crackled through the comms. "Any sign of additional hostiles?" I opened my mouth to answer, then something smashed into the back of my head. Not dull, not distant. A white-hot spike drove through my skull like someone had rammed a steel rod straight between my eyes. Oh, pain detonated in my brain as if it were my head, not a machine's. Tried to turn, to see, to react, but the world was collapsing into a tunnel of static and darkness. Through the failing senses, like looking through a shattered lens, I caught one last image. A third shooter stepping out of the alley behind me, rifle raised, closing in. He'd been camped in that alley the whole damn time, letting me burn focus on his buddies while he steadied his perfect kill shot. A patient predator, smart and deadly. The world pitched hard as the robot's body folded, metal limbs slamming into the dirt like a falling steel animal. I felt every jolt, every crash, as if the machine had bones and nerves and they were all mine. I tasted blood even, warm and metallic, something I shouldn't ever be able to taste in that body. My breathing turned thin and frantic, echoing inside a skull that technically wasn't there at all. Then the lights went out. I lurched upright with a ragged gasp, ripped back into Nevada like I'd been dragged up from the bottom of a lake. The VR rig clung to my skull like it weighed a ton, and my hands wouldn't stop shaking. Kate was already at my side, yanking cables and shutting down the neural link. Jesus Christ, I muttered, pressing a hand to the spot where the bullet had ripped through the robot's head. No blood, no wound, but the pain still throbbed like a ghost that refused to leave. Well, that's normal, David said, though the look on his face didn't match the words. Disconnection can make the sensory feedback hit hard. Normal, sure. Getting my brain turned inside out by a headshot was just another day at the office. Kate scowled at her tablet, scrolling through data like she was reading my autopsy. Your neural activity spiked way past baseline near the end. How do you feel? Well, like I just got executed, I said, rubbing my temples, trying to scrape the memory of dying out of my skull. Well, that pain had been real. Too real. Dr. Gordon materialized beside the chair with her own device, tapping through charts that meant nothing to me. The interface generates total sensory immersion, she said calmly. Your brain processes the robot's damage as if your own body took the hit. Disturbing, yes, but harmless. Harmless, right. I took a round to the head, collapse, blackout, and apparently that's just part of the fun. Well, the mission was a success overall, Jim chimed in. He neutralized 2 hostiles and gathered intel on insurgent locations. Success. I walked straight into a setup and got myself virtually executed. If this had been real-world deployment, they'd be hauling back a wrecked, multi-million-dollar machine and 0 useful data. But even that wasn't what stuck with me. As my pulse settled and the room stopped spinning, something else crawled back into my mind like a splinter. The kid. That kid's face wouldn't leave my head. Well, not the fear, no, fear was normal. No, it was the recognition. Like he'd already watched me die once and knew it was about to happen again. Like he'd seen the ending before I even noticed the plot. The echo of yesterday's death still hammered behind my eyes when I stepped back into Building C. The fluorescent lights felt bright and very, very cold. Kate glanced up from a nest of wires and screens, eyebrows raised. Hey, you're early. I figured you wouldn't be in until later. Well, I want back in, I snapped. Didn't mean to sound that harsh, but it came out like a command anyway. David then drifted out from behind a bank of monitors, a mug of coffee steaming in his hand like he'd been waiting there the whole time. That same easy smile, that same calm tone, like we were chatting about weekend plans. Dirk, maybe slow down. Yesterday's sensory traumas... I'm fine, I lied. I could feel the phantom impact tearing through my skull, an invisible bruise throbbing behind my forehead. Sleep hadn't helped. Nothing would, I guessed, except getting back control. I needed another run. I needed to prove I wasn't going to flinch the next time someone tried to virtually blow my head apart. Kate traded a silent, uneasy look with David. God, I hated that look. That clinical concern, that hesitation. Well, the neural interface can stack emotional strain, she said carefully. Dr. Gordon thinks... Dr. Gordon doesn't have to own the mission, I cut in. I dropped into the control chair before they could talk me down. Either this tech works or it doesn't. Either I can run it or I can't. Only way to get the answer is, That's when Jim appeared, clutching his usual stack of documents like he lived inside those folders. He flashed an approving grin. Ah, eager, good. We need that kind of momentum. Same objective as yesterday, same location, same intel markers. He slid the image across the workstation. A satellite shot of the village again, now peppered with updated tactical overlays, boxes and angles marking threat zones. Something about that picture tugged at me. A slightly different perspective, maybe higher resolution. Could have been nothing. It could have been everything. Kate lifted the rig then, waiting. "Ready when you are." I didn't hesitate. I leaned forward and let that heavy device swallow my vision. The jump hit cleaner this time. Extremely clean. One blink I was in Nevada, the next blink I was back on that dead stretch of sand and broken stone. But the air felt off, like someone had nudged reality a few millimeters to the left. The village looked the same as yesterday, almost frame for frame, but the details were wrong. A new house squatted on the eastern edge, small, unfamiliar, wearing blue shutters where I was certain brown ones had been. A shop sign that had screamed Arabic the day before now carried letters I couldn't place, like someone had swapped languages overnight and hoped I wouldn't notice. I tried to brush it off. Memory gets mushy after trauma, and the neural interface loved to bend whatever my eyes were pulling in. But then I saw her again. That same woman kneeling by the same tiny house, praying in the exact same posture. Only this time her voice cut sharper, thinner, and was edged with panic. The translator snatched fragments out of the air. "Protect us from... not again." And something that sounded like a plea for it all to end. Well, that part was new. Yesterday she'd prayed like someone sending a message into the void, but today she was begging for help from something breathing down her neck. I moved through the village more slowly. Every step was deliberate, watching for the ambush points I already knew were waiting. The robot's sensors confirmed it. The same heat blooms in the same places. Rooftop on my left, window dead ahead, alley breathing on my spine. At least the danger hadn't bothered to reinvent itself. And then the kid materialized, right on cue, slipping out from behind the same corner, that same grimy white shirt. But when his eyes landed on me, the translation feed didn't choke like last time. His voice came through clean, cold, and unmistakably English. "You shouldn't be here." I froze. Yesterday his words had been static, noise that I couldn't decode, but today they hit me like he was talking straight into my skull. "What did you say?" I asked. The boy didn't look scared, not even close. His eyes were wide with something worse. Recognition. Like he'd seen me before, like he remembered me. It's impossible. Yesterday had been my first time inside the robot. "You came back," the boy said, his voice thin as a wire. Now the village was waking up around him. An old man drifted out of the doorway. A woman leaned out from behind a crumbling wall. A teenager slid out from the shadow of a market stall. All of them staring at me with the same look. Fear, yes, but laced with something worse. They all had that glint of recognition. "They're going to kill you again," the boy whispered. Again? Part 3. Well, my stomach dropped, even though the robot body technically didn't have one. How could he know about yesterday? This place was supposed to be real villages, real lives. No memory resets, no looping awareness of previous missions. "Who's going to kill me?" I asked, but the kid was already retreating, shaking his head like he'd said too much. The others were murmuring now, pointing at me, at the metal limbs, the artificial joints. The translator caught bits of their panic. "The metal man, same as before, why does he keep returning?" Well, everything about this felt wrong. Real people didn't talk like they'd seen a ghost wearing steel. Real people didn't remember robots past death like it was a village secret. "Control," I whispered into the comm. "The locals are acting strange." "Define strange," Jim replied, bored as ever. They're acting like they know me. The kid said I came back. A pause. Static. Then David cut in. Probably just confusion. Complex AI behavior can look more advanced than it is. Don't overthink it. But AI? What AI? Are these people supposed to be flesh and blood? Not programmed simulations. Something was off, way off. I was about to push back when my world erupted. Gunfire, same spots as yesterday, same choreography. The rooftop sniper kicked things off, muzzle flashes chewing holes in the afternoon glare. I threw myself behind the familiar low wall, sparks dancing off the robot's chest plating. But this time I wasn't blind. No, I knew the rhythm of their attack, knew the second shooter's perch, knew he'd fire 2 shots before shifting for a third. So I beat him to it. 3 rounds straight through the window. Heard the thud of a collapsing body. The rooftop shooter was tougher, though. Well, I'd already died once here. Wasn't planning on doing the same thing twice. Instead of stepping into his line of fire again, I pushed the robot's frame to its limits, sprinting low and fast around the far side of the building. 30 seconds of weaving through the rubble and broken shadows, and I had a clean angle on the rooftop. 1 shot, 1 body dropping. 2 down now. That left the alley rat. I pivoted hard, my weapon up, already bracing for the attack I knew was coming. And there he was. Same narrow passage, same stance, rifle leveled at my head, just like yesterday. Only this time I didn't give him the luxury of a first shot. My burst slammed into his chest, plate on flesh, before he even twitched the trigger. He collapsed backward, skidding on dust and trash, disappearing into the dark slit between the walls. Silence then swallowed the village. It was just the fading echo of gunfire bouncing off stone. I'd done it. Broken the loop, shattered whatever script this place kept trying to force on me. Then I heard the crying. The boy stood exactly where I'd seen him before, his face wet, his shoulders shaking. "Why did you kill them again?" he asked. "They were trying to protect us." "Protect you from what?" "From me." I keyed the comm. "Control, mission complete." But the words felt dead coming out of my mouth. 3 hostiles neutralized. Excellent work, Jim said. Now head to the extraction. I started toward the edge of the village, but the kid trailed after me, his steps soft in the dust. "You'll come back tomorrow," he said. Not a question, just a fact. "You always come back." "Listen, kid, I have no idea what you think is happening." He wiped his nose on his sleeve. "The metal man arrives. The fighters try to stop him. Everyone dies, then it all resets." His eyes lifted to mine then. "How many times are you going to make us live through it?" Before I could answer that, the robot body shuddered. Warning glyphs flared across my vision, bright and frantic. Error codes streamed faster than I could grab them. Servos locked, limbs stiffened, grinding. Something deep in the chassis whined like a dying animal. "Control, system failure," I barked. But the comm dissolved into static, drowning my voice. The boy didn't move. He just watched, sadness settling into him like old dust. "Oh, it's starting," he murmured. And then the pain hit. Not bullets this time, no. Something slower and heavier. Like the whole machine was clamping down on me. The limbs sparked, the joints were screaming, metal grinding on metal like bones snapping under pressure. I tried to bail out, tried to rip my mind free and haul myself back to Nevada, but the interface locked up tight. No response, no exit. I was sealed inside the machine as it came apart piece by piece, forced to feel every melting circuit, every servo grinding itself into slag. The last thing I saw before the world folded into darkness was the boy's face, pity softening his features like he already knew how this would end. I snapped awake in the control chair, choking on air, tearing at the headset like it was suffocating me. Kate was already on me, her hands flying across the panels as she pulled me out of the link. "System malfunction," she was saying to someone behind me. "Total cascade in the monitor controls." "Hey, how's his neural activity?" Dr. Gordon's voice this time, calm and detached. "Spiked but stable. No lasting harm," Kate answered. I sat up slowly, my head spinning like it wanted to roll off my neck. What the hell was that? "Hardware failure," David said. Though the way he studied his tablet, his brow furrowed, his lips tight, did not match his tone. Systems sometimes overload during extended deployments. "Look, the villagers knew me," I said, scanning their faces. Kate was glued to her monitors. Jim was scribbling notes. Dr. Gordon was watching me like I was another data point in a chart. That kid said I'd been there before. "Advanced behavioral modeling," Jim replied, not even glancing up. "The AI generates responses based on stored scenario patterns. Sometimes it can feel like the NPCs have persistent memory." "Wait, what? NPCs? Non-player characters? Like this whole place was a game skin stretched over something uglier." "Those people are real," I said. "You told me they were real. A real village, real insurgents." Of course they're real," David said. But there was a wobble in his voice, something just shy of a lie. The simulation layer just enhances their responses. I wanted to push back, tear their explanations apart, but exhaustion hit me like a hammer. God, my skull throbbed, the ghost pain from the robot's destruction echoing through nerves that shouldn't have remembered any of it. Maybe they were right. Maybe the interface was scrambling my perception, making me see loops that weren't there. "Hey, I want the mission footage," I said. Kate and David traded a quiet, nervous look then. "The robot's recording array was damaged during the failure," Kate said. "Most of the data's corrupted." Oh, convenient. Too fucking convenient. "Look, tomorrow we'll have a fresh unit," David added. "New hardware, updated software. Should clear up the glitches you experienced." Tomorrow. Oh, the boy's voice crawled back into my head. "You'll come back tomorrow. You always come back." I pushed myself out of the chair, my legs wobbling like the ground couldn't quite trust me. "Hey, look, I need air," I muttered, not waiting for permission. As I headed for the door, I heard Dr. Gordon's voice drift behind me. She was quiet and clinical, and something about elevated stress markers and possible dissociative episodes. They were talking about me the way mechanics talk about an overheating engine. Not a person, a system, a malfunction. Outside Building C, I dropped onto a bench and tried to scrape some sense out of the mess in my head. The villagers' reactions, the boy's voice, the looped choreography of violence that played out almost identically to the day before, right up until everything glitched into a nightmare. Well, either their tech was 1,000 miles ahead of anything they briefed me on, or there was something they weren't saying, something big. That boy's face haunted me. The tears, the exhaustion, the way he spoke like someone reliving trauma, not running a scripted interaction. "How many times are you going to make us do this?" What if he wasn't talking about a sim at all? 2 hours later, I'd had enough. I shoved through the doors of Building C like I was breaching a hostile compound. David glanced up from his coffee, plastering on that soft, warm smile he used when he thought charm would smooth the edges. "Oh, Dirk, feeling better?" "Yeah, sometimes a bit of fresh air." "Look, cut the bullshit." I planted myself in front of his desk, leaning in. "They knew me. That kid told me I'd been there before, said it in perfect English. And the woman, she wasn't praying some generic plea. She was praying for protection from something specific. Explain that." Kate flinched, her eyes darting up, then immediately burying themselves in a tangle of wires like she'd never seen electronics before. Jim didn't even blink. He just kept writing, his pen scratching against paper like he was documenting the weather. Look, I understand why you're shaken, David said, setting his mug aside. Well, the simulation tech can throw people off. What you're feeling is normal. Simulation. The word slammed into me like a fist. Yesterday you said it was a real village. It is real, Jim said, still not looking at me. Real coordinates, real tactical conditions. But the behavioral responses, those are handled by advanced AI. A virtual population. Virtual population? Well, I stared at him then. You're telling me those people aren't actually there? David didn't flinch. He just lifted a tablet like it was a shield. The training environment mirrors real-world terrain, he said. We pull satellite data to recreate every ridge, every street, every damn pebble. And we populate it with AI-driven civilians and insurgents. Perfect replicas. Most advanced combat sim on the planet. Kate finally raised her eyes then. The neural interface tricks your brain into treating the simulation as real. It can't tell the difference between outside sensory input and what we inject into your cortex. That's why the pain hits hard. Why the interactions feel alive. Alive. God, I thought about the boy's tears, how his voice cracked when he asked why I kept putting them through this hell. Those tears were real. They had to be. High-level emotional modeling, Jim said without looking up, flipping a page like he was bored with the topic. The AI generates appropriate emotional states for the scenario. Fear, grief, anger, all tuned to create immersion. Yeah, but then why do they remember me? I snapped. Why does the boy say I come back? David leaned in then, his eyes bright like he was proud of what he was about to say. That's the genius of the system. The sim incorporates memory persistence. Each run evolves. Characters react to previous iterations. It pressures operators to adapt to shifting dynamics. His answer sounded slick and polished, like they'd rehearsed this speech and expected me to swallow it whole. Look, I want to see the code, I said. Show me the AI. Show me how this thing thinks. Kate and David traded that same look again, the one that always smelled like locked doors. The software's classified, Kate said. Yeah, proprietary algorithms, David added. Jim chimed in, again without glancing up. Clearance is compartmentalized. Need to know. God damn it, always need to know. Always classified, always just trust us. Look, David said, rising to his feet. I get why you're struggling. The tech is so advanced it's hard to accept that none of it's real. That's exactly what makes it effective. He crossed to a cabinet and pulled out another headset. Sleeker, newer, built like a promise and a threat. Now, Kate's been iterating based on your feedback, he said. Better neural integration, less physiological strain, cleaner sensory feed, more tactical clarity. Well, Kate was already wiring it up, her hand steady like she'd done this 1,000 times. This should eliminate the disorientation you experienced, she said. Sharper input and more intuitive control. Now, we'd like you to run one more session, David told me. Final test before phase 2. I looked at the headset, then at their faces, their polished professionalism, their manufactured concern, corporate pride gleaming underneath it all. Well, maybe they were right. Maybe the neural interface was twisting my senses, stitching illusions together until they looked like patterns. Maybe I was chasing ghosts in code. One more run, I said. But afterward, I want everything. Full debrief, no filters. Of course, David replied. Total transparency once testing is complete. Yeah, sure. Always after. I dropped into the control chair then. Kate lowered the new headset onto my skull, adjusting the ports so they pressed neatly against my temples. Well, it did feel lighter, sleeker, like the machine itself wanted me to trust it. Now remember, she said softly, don't fight the connection. Let the system take you in. The transition hit like slipping between breaths. Nevada vanished, and the village snapped into place around me. But it wasn't the same. Part 4. The woman by the house wasn't praying. She was breaking. Her body was shaking, her face buried in her hands as she sobbed. Tears were pouring out of her. Her voice hit the translator raw and panic this time. "Please, not again. We can't do this again. Make it stop, please. Make it stop." Then doors opened. Curtains twitched. People stepped out. They weren't hiding. They weren't running. They walked straight toward me, their faces carved with a terror so deep it looked ancient. Not fear of death. Fear of repeating it. The boy appeared, crying already, his tears streaking dust down his cheeks. "We don't want to die again," he whispered. "Please, we don't want to die again." An old man limped forward. "How many times?" he asked. "How many times will you make us do this?" A woman tightened her grip on a baby whose face was grey with exhaustion. "A child dies every day," she says. "Every day I watch him die. I can't stop it. You won't let us stop it." This wasn't AI. This wasn't programming. This was suffering. Raw, repetitive, and unmistakably human. "Control," I said into the comm, my pulse spiking. "Something's wrong. These people..." "Proceed with mission parameters," Jim cut in. "Recon and target elimination." "They're begging me to stop," I said. "They're talking about dying over and over." "Enhanced emotional modeling," David replied. "It's designed to push your psychological limits. Just stay focused." But I wasn't listening anymore. My feet were already moving, toward the villagers, not away. Toward the truth, or the thing pretending to be it. Well, if this was a simulation, then nothing mattered. But if it wasn't... I knelt beside the boy then. "I'm not here to hurt you," I said. "I'm going to try and break this pattern." His eyes widened like he'd never heard hope spoken out loud before. You can change it?" he asked. "I don't know," I said, "but I'm damn sure going to try." I didn't head for the kill zones this time. Instead, I walked straight into the dead center of the village and planted my feet. If they wanted me, they could come collect me. I was done dancing through their scripted little murder maze. "What the hell are you doing?" Jim's voice snapped through the comms, all static and panic. "I'm breaking the pattern," I said. "If this is all just code wrapped in sand and sunlight, then none of it should matter." So I stood there in the open, my arms thrown wide like I was taunting God. The perfect target. "Come on!" I yelled at the crooked doorways and shadowed windows where I knew they were tucked away. "I'm right here." Silence pressed down for a long, heavy second. Then they came. Shapes peeled out of doorways and slipped from the alleys. More than before. Not 3 gunmen, but a whole crowd of armed men. A dozen at least, fanning out around me like they were closing a trap they'd sprung 1,000 times. Still no shots, just that slow, patient advance. The boy was there too, watching from the same spot, but this time there was something fragile flickering behind his eyes. Hope. "Are you going to save us?" "I'm going to try," I said. That was when the robot systems didn't fail, they detonated. No warning, no glitch, full body collapse. An alarm shrieked inside my skull as the machine twisted in on itself. My left arm tore out of its socket with a grinding crunch that felt like real bone snapping, the limb hanging dead at my side like a butchered piece of meat. Pain ripped through me. God, it was deep and brutal. Not a clean shot, but a slow annihilation as joints blew apart and servos screamed themselves to death. I tried to run, I tried to move, but the legs locked rigid and the whole frame buckled. God, I toppled hard onto the gravel then. The insurgents closed in, unhurried. They knew I wasn't going anywhere. "Control, emergency disconnect. Pull me out," I roared into the comms. Only static answered. The boy started crying again, but the sound wasn't fear this time. It was disappointment, heartbreak. "I thought you were going to save us," he whispered. And one of the insurgents stepped forward, his rifle aimed at my head. Instead of firing, he spoke in his own language, the translation system guttering as it died. I caught broken pieces of it. "Punishment. Listen. Again tomorrow." The rifle butt came down on my skull then. Well, something cracked. Mine, the robot's, maybe both. But they didn't stop there. They beat me to pieces bit by bit. Metal bones smashed, circuits frying, my mind forced to feel every shattering blow as the simulation refused to cut the feed. The boy didn't look away, not once. He just watched with those sad, ancient eyes like he'd seen this play out 100 times already. The last thing I heard before the world blinked out was his voice. "See you tomorrow." I came back to Nevada, screaming. I was still trembling when Kate tried to peel the headset off, my fingers digging at the neural ports like they were hot metal welded to my skull. The screaming had finally stopped. Apparently that had been me, but the ghost of the pain was still there, echoing through nerves that shouldn't have been able to feel anything. I could still feel the moment they caved the robot's skull in. "Get away from me." I slapped her hands aside and tore the headset off myself. Cables snapped, alarms chirped. Kate swore under her breath, but I didn't care. David was already closing in, wearing that soft, concerned look he used right before launching into another one of his carefully packaged explanations about sophisticated AI response patterns and emergent behavior. I cut him off with a raised hand. Don't, David, just don't." My voice sounded shredded and raw, like it had been dragged across broken glass. "I'm not leaving this room until someone tells me what's actually going on." "Dirk, you need to calm down," Dr. Gordon said, materializing at my shoulder with a tablet in hand. "Psychological trauma from repeated neural interface immersion can produce—" "Look, real people don't beg like that," I snapped. I pushed myself up from the chair. My legs wobbled, but they held. Real people don't remember dying again and again. And that kid, he knew. He knew exactly what was happening to him. Kate was pretending her equipment needed urgent resuscitation, frankly tapping through diagnostic screens. Jim had opened his folder, but wasn't writing a damn thing, just staring at the paper like he was waiting for it to confess something. David cleared his throat. "The simulation parameters are designed to evoke realistic emotional—" "Stop lying." I took a step toward him then, and he actually retreated. "The kid said, 'See you tomorrow,' right before they killed me, so tell me, how does an algorithm know about tomorrow?" Silence dropped over the room then, heavy and cold. Only the soft hum of electronics and Kate's jittery typing filled the space. Everybody looked at each other with that tight, strained expression of people waiting for someone else to fall on the grenade. That's when the door opened. Colonel Arthur walked in like he owned gravity itself. I'd only met him twice before, but the man carried command the way other people carried oxygen. The room straightened itself as he entered. So did I. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, his voice clipped and decisive, I need the room." David looked like he wanted to argue and then thought better of it. "Sir, the test subject is showing signs of acute psychological distress. Look, Dr. Gordon should probably—" Arthur's steel-grey eyes swept across the team, slicing through their excuses. "All of you, out now." They obeyed instantly, filing toward the door like guilty schoolkids. Kate grabbed her tablet, Jim hugged his folder, Dr. Gordon shot me one last clinical glance. Then they were gone, swallowed by the hallway beyond. 30 seconds later, it was just me and Colonel Arthur, alone in a room full of blinking machines and the kind of silence that meant something very bad was coming. Arthur wandered over to the beat-up coffee station like this was a social call, poured himself a cup and took a lazy sip. "You want some? It's awful, but it'll keep you awake." "I want answers." I know. He grimaced at the coffee. Sit down, Lewis. This is going to take a while. I didn't move. Is that village real? Arthur studied me over the rim of his cup, his eyes flat and militarily calm. Yes. That one word hit harder than anything he could have shouted. After hours of being force-fed nonsense about behavioral modeling and advanced simulation heuristics, hearing him say yes felt like getting punched in the ribs. The people, I said quietly. The boy who keeps trying to warn me. They're real. Real. I dropped into the nearest chair like gravity had doubled. And what the hell have you been making me do? Arthur set his coffee aside, pulled up a chair across from me, and leaned in. 3 years ago, we ran a field test on an experimental temporal displacement device in that region. Ultra-classified. Need to know. Blacker than black. Temporal displacement. Time travel. Of course, that's what this was. The device malfunctioned during the initial activation, Arthur went on. Instead of creating a contained temporal field, it locked roughly 2 square kilometers into a continuous 24-hour loop. The village, I said. The land around it. Everyone in it? Stuck repeating the same day, he confirmed. Over and over. I saw the woman again in my mind, on her knees shaking, begging whatever god she believed in to make it stop. How long? 3 years, 4 months, 16 days, he said, as calmly as if he were reciting an inventory. Same day, every day. They remember everything, every loop, every death, every moment of fear, but they can't break the cycle. The room felt like it was tilting. My stomach followed. You've been using them for weapons testing. Well, the situation provided a unique opportunity, Arthur said, his voice steady. A perfectly controlled environment. We can test hardware, tactics, and neural interface compatibility without exposing actual personnel to danger. Without risk to actual personnel? I echoed, my voice going hollow. What about risk to them? They're already dead, Lewis. His tone didn't waver. Technically, their original selves died the moment the temporal field locked. What you're interacting with are the temporal echoes, recurring imprints of their final day. They don't feel dead, I said. That boy cries real tears. Well, the echoes retain every memory, every sensation from the moment the loop began, Arthur said. To them, the experience is indistinguishable from reality. He leaned forward again now, his expression grim. But the part you need to wrap your head around, Arthur said, is that nothing you do in there sticks. Every loop resets, every death gets wiped clean. Except they remember it, I muttered. Yes. I pressed my palms against my face. Jesus Christ, how many times have I killed those people? Your missions? 17 loops. The program's been active for over a year. Multiple operators, several test scenarios, rotating hardware evaluations. 17. 17 times I'd marched into that village like an executioner. 17 times I brought fear and fire and chaos to people already locked in a nightmare they couldn't wake from. 17 times that kid had tried to warn me, his voice cracking, eyes begging. And 17 times I'd failed him. Look, the robot breaks down, I said, when I try to change the script. Safety protocols, Arthur replied. If an operator strays too far from mission parameters, the system forces a shutdown and resets the loop. Prevents contamination of the environment and preserves the integrity of the data. To protect your experiment, I said. Not the people. To protect a national security asset, he snapped. One that gives us untouchable training grounds. Perfect intel opportunities and zero risk to American personnel. Consequence-free, I said, laughing, but a sharp and broken laugh. Tell that to the kid who begs me every day not to kill his neighbors. The temporal echoes continue their cycle whether we intervene or not," said Arthur. "At least now their condition has value. Their suffering isn't wasted." Yes, somehow the truth landed harder than all the polished lies David and the others had spoon-fed me. At least they tried to wrap this nightmare in jargon and excuses. Arthur didn't bother. He knew exactly what they were doing, and he didn't lose a second of sleep over it. "Well, I'm done," I said. "I'm not going back in there." "I'm afraid that's not your call." Arthur rose then, tugging his uniform straight like he was preparing for a ceremony instead of sentencing me. "You military personnel assigned to a classified project. You'll continue your duties until you're reassigned. And if I refuse, court-martial," he said flatly. "Failure to follow orders, violating security protocols, breaching classified agreements. You're looking at 20 years minimum in military prison." I stared at him then. "You'd actually do that?" "Lewis," he said, almost bored, "this project is classified above levels you've never even heard of. Temporal displacement alone could change modern warfare, intelligence, medicine, everything. We're not going to let one operator's sudden crisis of conscience sabotage years of progress." "One operator's conscience?" I echoed, standing now. "Is that what you call it when someone refuses to torture innocent people?" "I call it a failure to grasp the bigger picture." We faced each other across a room full of machinery designed to let me puppeteer a metal body through a broken slice of time, while real people screamed, begged, died, and woke up to do it all again. And his expression didn't shift an inch. Oh, he was calm, professional, and utterly soulless. "You have 48 hours to process this and report for your next session," Arthur said. "Use that time to adjust your perspective." He reached the door, paused, then glanced back. "And Lewis, everything said here is classified. You try to tell anyone, you'll be charged with treason." The door clicked shut behind him, quiet as a coffin lid. Then I stood alone amid the humming equipment, the cable still slick with my sweat, the air thick with the ghost of the loop I'd helped destroy 17 times. 17, so far. 17 entries into their endless nightmare, 17 deaths I'd delivered. 17 warnings from a boy who still thought someone, anyone, might save them. "See you tomorrow," he'd whispered. But he wasn't going to see me tomorrow. He wasn't going to see me ever again. I was done being part of their hell. Well, I don't know about you, but I think for the biggest thing to think about in that whole story is being caught on the wrong side of right and wrong and knowing there's absolutely nothing you can do about it. Makes you think, doesn't it? Well, don't think too much about it. It's just a story, as I always tell you. Anyway, thanks again for listening. Another one from Augustus Cordoba there. And yeah, really was quite one to think about anyway. So, this is 3 nights in a row. Wednesday night here. I'll be taking an eye out from this channel. There'll be a podcast or two in the next couple of days over on my second channel. That's for me rounding up stories I've done over the years and thematically organising them into the same thing, but slightly different. Anyway, I am waffling on. Took a hell of a lot of time recording that one today, so I hope you enjoyed it. I'll join in the conversation below, as I always do, so anything you want to say, just let me know. Alright, till the next time, my dear friends, very, very sweet dreams, and I'll see you soon. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen to this story today. It really means a lot to me and to the author of the story, of course. Well, if you want to know more about me, I'm pretty much everywhere on social media. You can find me on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. You can download my music on SoundCloud. I've got a Patreon if you feel like. Throw me $1 or $2. Very much appreciated. And of course, on Reddit, I have a place where you can leave stories if you want me to read one that you've written. Well, hoping to see you all again very soon. Till then, sweet dreams. Bye-bye.